The Bible is the authority on diversity and inclusiveness. You can't say that. Well, we've got to say something because this isn't working. And we should know better by now because we were told 2,000 years ago exactly how to create a world where everybody can be equally loved, equally treated, equally respected. It also told us exactly how to be diverse and unified with justice for everybody. I mean, what if all this is just from a lack of reading this? Like my man Ravi said, the reason we have 17,000 pages in our law books is because we cannot follow 10 lines on a tablet made of stone. Disagree? Well, then I challenge you, I dare you to come on a journey with us as we talk about how to build an equal world for everybody. Everybody. By talking about just 3 letters written by one guy about another guy. And in doing that, just watch the answer to all of this falling into place. So let's look at where this idea actually comes from, which gives us a really good idea of how this is supposed to work and why we've not been doing a great job of it so far. So let's talk about the players. Okay, here's the letter writing guy. Ready? Here he is. This is Paul the box ticker. He's a Roman, he's a Jew, he's a Pharisee, and he's a victim of all 3. Why? Because he's a Christian. This guy is the poster child for diversity. And in just 3 letters, I can prove it and I can show you what diversity was always supposed to be. Now, one of those letters is really famous. It's 1 Corinthians 13. It reads, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it isn't proud, it does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth." Now, we all hear this at weddings and at funerals, but don't you wish people paid more attention to this? Don't you wish that people really loved like this? Don't you wish people really lived like this? Imagine what the world would be like if we all did this. So why don't we? Maybe we need some context. You see, everyone knows this chapter, but not so many people know the chapter before. And this is the bit he wrote right before that in the letter, and it provides context for this whole verse. Let me read you what he says. He wrote, "If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be?" Sounds simple enough so far, but watch what comes next. "But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be?" And here's how he finishes this. "As it is, there are many parts, but one body." Do you see what he's saying? If we were all the same, it wouldn't work. Your hand needs your foot, and your hand needs your foot to be a foot, not a hand. Your ear needs your eyes to be eyes and not ears. We're not all supposed to be the same. It's in our differences that we have value. Right there, he's saying we are diverse and we need to be. When he says here that God has placed the parts in the body the way he wants them, what he's saying is that you were designed for diversity. You were designed. So first of all, you're designed to be you. This is not even original, and he even knew that at the time. I mean, he was an expert in the scriptures, right? And let's look at those. So we all know Genesis, and you've got Adam, and then 10 generations later, you've got his descendant Noah, and then 10 generations later, you've got his descendant Abraham, and then 2 generations later, you've got his descendant Israel, right? And Paul was an Israelite. He was a descendant of this guy Israel. So when they were writing the story of their people, why not start here? Why not start their story with Israel? Because that's where their people became their people. I mean, Adam had other descendants, lots of them. And Noah had other descendants, lots of them. And Abraham had other descendants, lots of them. What you're looking at here is the family tree of the whole human species. Why did they just not tell the story of their own people? Why does the Bible tell the story of the whole of humanity? Maybe it's got something to do with the guy who didn't like fish. Let's talk about Jonah for a minute, shall we? We all know that he got swallowed by a whale and that he was running away from God. But why was he running away from God? Because God wanted him to go and tell people that God wanted to save them. But he didn't want to, because they weren't Jews. They weren't Israelites. They weren't like him. He didn't like them. He wanted them to die. He refused to save them, and God said, no, no, you're going to do it. And so he sent the fish, and you know the story. And maybe you believe that this is a literal story, or maybe you just think it's a figurative story. It doesn't really matter at this point, because this is taken by scholars as being a letter to Israel to say, you were supposed to be a blessing to the whole world. Why are you keeping it to yourself? Jonah is supposed to be an allegory. This is what a lot of scholars think, to say that Israel, you have a job to do. It's to go and tell everybody the good news. And just to make sure we're on the same page here, let's talk about the King of the Jews. This is Jesus himself. As the King of the Jews, he's the most Jewish Jew to ever Jew. If anybody has a right to be about his own people, it's the king of his own people. And yet, just after he's born, this old guy by the name of Simeon, he has been waiting to see God's chosen one. He has refused to die, and as got older, he will not die until he has seen the Messiah. And then he sees the baby Jesus. And what does he say about him? He says this child is a light for revelation to the others. Well, he actually said Gentiles, which is kind of a Jewish word for others. Basically, this kid is going to be a light for those who are not like us. From top to bottom, from the front to the back, this whole thing is one single message, one unifying idea, that this is for everybody. Everybody. So what does this say? Well, it's got a lot of messages in it, but the overriding message that you just can't miss is that we are all loved equally. No matter what color you are, no matter what gender you are, no matter what race you are, no matter how old or how young you are, no matter how rich or poor you are, we are all loved equally. And that idea was the end of slavery. That idea was the beginning of civil rights. That idea has set people free the world over. Because for the first time ever, being more rich didn't mean you had more rights. For the first time ever, it meant that you cannot enslave a person because every person is loved equally by God. So who are you to put them down? Who are you to persecute them? It was a revolutionary idea that we take for granted today. And maybe that's why we're still getting it wrong. Maybe that's why we're not doing a good job of being diverse, because we've forgotten the original idea that told us that. And it can be so easy for people to claim the first part of this, but miss the second part, that we are loved equally, but that means we must love equally, because everyone around you is loved by God as well. So we are loved equally, and therefore we must love equally. And there are no caveats. There are no get out clauses. But what about? Nope. But what the? Nope. But he? Nope. What? Even if they? Yep. We were designed for diversity. So, you know who deserves justice? Everybody. You know who deserves peace? Everybody. Do you know who deserves love? Everybody. Do you know who deserves forgiveness when they fail to do all these things? Everybody. We know it. You know it. We might not like it, because at times it's really, really hard. But we know that it's right. And we know that this is wrong. And given that this is such an ancient idea that we've been getting told so often for so long that we all think it's kind of obvious, it must ask the question, if we all know that we're designed for diversity, then why are we so bad at this? Now, I could hover on that question and I could ask that, but that's just beating ourselves up, isn't it? We're just focusing on our failings and our inadequacies. I'd rather do something more hopeful. So instead of asking, why are we so bad at this? How about we ask, how do we do this better? How do we build a world where we really are equal and we all are really okay with that, and we all treat each other like we're okay with that? How can we do this better? Well, it's really easy. We just look at these 3 letters written by one guy about another guy. Now, we've already read one, but I recommend you go and read some of that for yourself. So why don't you go ahead and read 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 13. Read them both, and then read them again. And then think about the people it's hard to get along with and read them again. And then there's 2 more letters I want to look at. And when we do, we'll look at how to build a world that's diverse, that's unified with justice and opportunity and love and forgiveness and peace and oneness for everybody. Everybody. No exceptions. because I think it's time we had a better world. Don't you? I think it's time for more justice and better equality. Don't you? So this is the journey I want you to come on with me. It's going to be a rocky road because not all of this is going to be easy. It's simple, but it's not always going to be easy. But come with us because this is going to be so rewarding. We've been given the secrets by a God who loves us and who wants the best for us, who gave us the best example in his son Jesus and simply invites us to follow. So I'm just going to pray, and I'm going to ask, if you've never prayed this prayer before, then why don't you just go ahead and pray along with me? And it's really simple. Jesus asked us to follow, not to obey a whole bunch of rules, but simply to follow and do what he did. And maybe it's time you can get to know him. Maybe it's time that you can meet the guy who turned Paul's life around and turned him into this authority on diversity. Would you like to meet the source of information yourself? Well, I'm going to pray, and I invite you to pray with me. Okay, so it's cool. Some words are going to come up on screen. So just say these words, and if you mean them, then I think things are going to happen for you. So come on, let's pray together. Jesus, thank you for coming into this world. I ask you into my life. Show me peace. Show me love. Let me see it. Let me feel it. Come into my life. Amen. If you prayed those words and you really meant that, then if I know Jesus, he's not going to leave you hanging. He's actually going to come and he's going to show up in your life, and you're going to feel love and you're going to feel peace, and things are going to change for you. And there's going to be more opportunities to take a step forward next week as we continue our journey, and we're going to look at some really practical steps on exactly how we can build this amazing world for everybody, and how we can do it so much better than anything we've ever seen before. It's simple, and it's something that we can do. And I really hope you'll join us as we carry this story on next time. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and have a wonderful week.